Welcome, everybody. You know, every time we do this once a month, there's people that have come back, and people have come back for the first time, and we hear stories like, I haven't been here since before the mud flow, and I'm so glad to be back, and we're just thrilled to have this open and starting to do programming again. So thank you, everybody for all of you for coming, and thanks for our people on Zoom. So as has become our practice, we're going to start with our Power Up practice. And there are these bookmarks out in the lobby if you want to grab one. Take it, and hopefully it'll help you to remind yourself to just pause once a day, maybe at noon, and just breathe into your heart and breathe out love to the community. So if you're wanting to do that, I invite you to join us right now. So put your feet on the floor, put your hand over your heart, and breathe very deeply into your heart. Power it up with that love that you have. And then breathe that love, breathe that energy out across the region, out across this area. There's so many people right now living and struggling and living in fear, and let our love surround them and help them know that they have support. Breathe in again, power up your heart. And this time, breathe it out across our nation, a country that's severely divided, and yet we know we are all living as one. And let this love bind us together and move us forward in a new way. Breathe into your heart again, power it up. And this time, breathe it out around the world, around our planet. There's so many war zones going on right now. Mother Earth is struggling, and we all know that we play a part in that healing, and part of that healing is the love that we are spreading. One more time, breathe into your heart and power it up. And this time, breathe it out to everyone in this room. We're all got something going on. We all have some kind of challenges and issues, and yet here we are today, coming together again to join in an effort to uplift those in our communities, in our lives, to make it better for them and for us. And with that, I say, let it be. Amen. Thank you. So again, welcome. On behalf of the America Heart community, I'm Sherry Purcell, the president and PEO. The America Heart community has owned this property since the 1950s. And over the years, it's morphed from a novitiate to a retreat center. And our community has changed during that time as well. So we were originally a canonical order of nuns that came over from Spain. But in the 1970s, that changed, and we became an ecumenical lay community. We are inclusive. We include men, women, gay, straight. We don't live in convents anymore. We're a community without walls. We have members all over the United States. We have some members in Canada and in England. We're really proud to say that right now. We take in new members annually, so if you're interested, get on our mailing list, as Pam talked about, and check us out online so you know what's going on. We began the Lunch and Learn here in Montecito as a way to begin to reopen this property that we know is so sacred and so important to so many people. And recently we partnered with the Southern California Retreat Foundation. They run a retreat center up in Big Bear. And we are now partnering with them for the next 3 years. They will be operating La Casa for us. So stay tuned as they begin to staff up, and you'll see more and more happening in terms of programming up here. We're really excited about that. Feel like we're on a roll. So part of our mission statement that's back on the back of the the bookmark. It says the Immaculate Heart Community, inclusive ecumenical community, seeks to create access for all persons to truth, equity, justice, and peace through spiritual development, education, the arts, and taking action that fosters care for the earth and all beings. So this Lunch and Learn series is our way of bringing people together, like-minded people that are working for the betterment of our communities, to strategically change those practices that impede full human development. And when you come to the Lunch and Learn, there's 3 pillars. There's 3 things we'd like you to think about. First is educate. So today we're going to be hearing from Kim Colby Davis, who is the Executive Director of Casa, the Court-Appointed Special Advocates Association. So as you're hearing from her, we're also going to ask you to act. So listen to her message, think about some things that you might be able to do to help with Casa. So we're educating ourselves. We ask you to pray in your own tradition around anything that you're hearing her talk about that kind of pulls at your heart and welcomes a prayer. And then again, take some action. So by way of introduction, Kim Colby Davis has served as Executive Director of Casa of Santa Barbara County since 2009. Leading the organization in providing trained volunteers to advocate for children in foster care. Kim is known for steady leadership, sound judgment, and a collaborative approach that balances mission impact with operational discipline. She has extensive experience in strategic planning, governance, capacity building, and managing large public and private funding portfolios. Her focus includes mentoring colleagues, improving accountability, and building durable systems to support long-term sustainability. Under her leadership, Casa has grown significantly, expanding from serving 150 children annually to over 500, representing a 340% program growth. Wow. In 2023, she was named Program Director of the Year by the National Casa GAL Association for Children. She was selected from 939 local programs nationwide for her innovative development and leadership. And just this month, Kim was appointed to the 2026 National Leadership Council of Casa and the GAL Association. Casa of Santa Barbara has been recognized as the best place to volunteer, there you go, the best place to work, and Nonprofit of the Year under her guidance. And beyond her executive role, she's served on boards such as the Santa Maria Valley Discovery Museum and Leading from Within in Santa Barbara County. So please put your hands together and join me in welcoming Kim Colby Davis. Welcome, Kim.
It was a beautiful, bright, sunny day about 13 years ago in the month of May when I pulled up to a group home to pick up a little boy who I had never met. And that's how the story of a Casa volunteer often begins. Today, I'm not here just as the Executive Director of Casa of Santa Barbara County. I'm here proudly as an advocate myself. I started out with Casa of Santa Barbara County in 2006 as an advocate, and I found Casa because I was specifically looking for the helpers. If you've ever heard the quote, take a look around and find the helpers. And that's where you'll find the important work being done. And I had gone through a life-threatening illness And I had been not working for a number of years. I had said goodbye to my prior career as a financial planner, and just spent a lot of years trying to figure out how I would get through the next day and the next day. And then one of the things that I used to help me get through that time was, unfortunately, it all happened during my 30s, my typical childbearing years. And so that dream went out the window, and I replaced that with sort of a mantra where I woke up every day and said, when I am well, I will work in the service of children. And for a long time, I didn't know if that day would ever come. And then in September, it's actually September 11th of 2006, I woke up from a brain surgery. And even on waking up, I knew that my life was changed and that I was given that second chance to do something important in the world. And by a few months later, I was in training to become a court-appointed special advocate. And I found Casa by asking people that I cared for and respected, who do you see really helping the most needy among us? The children especially, because that's where I was drawn. And I kept hearing this Casa. Well, I did not know what Casa was. I knew there was a Casa magazine. I knew there was Casa de Maria. I knew there was a Casa magazine. I thought it was maybe a foster home for children. I had no idea what Casa was. So I embarked on a spirit of learning, and I learned that a court-appointed special advocate was more than just a mentorship role. It was stepping into a child's life, regardless their age, at the worst time in that child's life, likely one of the worst possible times in that child's life, and then making a commitment where I would say, I will be by this child's side until I'm not needed. And I will do whatever is in the best interest of this child for as long as I'm needed. And I've over the years, I have served 9 different children, differing cases. I've served everywhere from a prematurely born baby who really had no chance of survival. And I felt that I couldn't assign that, by then I was running Casa. I felt that I couldn't assign that child to just anybody because it's really hard to lose a child. But yet I felt that that baby could not die alone. And not only did that baby not die alone, an adoptive parent was found for that baby, and that family loved on that little baby, and that baby lived for 8 months. And there was such incredible love and learning in that experience by itself. It was tough, but I knew that I stepped in for the right reasons, and I got the job done and found him. I wasn't needed. The job was that the baby needed love, and that's what we found for the baby. I've served up to a 20-year-old and everywhere in between. But the story that I'm wanting to tell you today, first, of course, talking to you as an advocate, to tell you what the life cycle of an advocate is on a somewhat typical case, is that of Jacob, and how rewarding and yet challenging it was to be his advocate for what turned out to be 5 years of incredible service. That first day, I pulled up outside of a group home where he had been placed because there wasn't a foster home that would take an 11-year-old boy. I don't know if they take 11-year-old girls more readily, but they wouldn't take him. So he jumps into my car, no hesitations at all. Now, I had read his file. I knew the trauma. I knew the tragedy. I knew the mom's story, which was terribly sad. And I knew some of what he had experienced that brought him to this day. What I was not expecting was this bundle of energy that came bouncing out of the house, and with probably an alarming lack of hesitance to jump into my car. But he jumps in my car and says, "Hey, I'm Jacob, and did you know I have a plan?" I was hooked. I mean, in those minutes, I was like, "No, I did not know that you had a plan, but I would love to hear about it." So he immediately answers and said, and remember, this is 11. He says, "I am going to study really hard. I'm going to work as hard as it takes. I'm going to get good grades, and then I am going to join the Air Force Division of the Army." Well, I grew up just outside of Vandenberg, so I was aware there's not really an Air Force Division of the Army, but he was going to join it, and I was going to do everything in my power to support his dream. And from that moment on, that was my goal. It was his dream. My job was simply to walk with him and see where we could go in pursuing his dream. So one of the first things that I was able to do as his advocate, among other things, I asked him, "Tell me what other things you like to do. I understand you like to study. What do you like to do for fun?" He goes, "Well, I like to read when I can." Well, what does that mean? And he said, "Well, I need a library card." And I said, "Well, what do you mean you don't have a library card?" And he goes, "Well, I can only get books when I have a library card, but they don't let me have one because I keep having to move from home to home." Well, that seemed ridiculous to me. So I thought, okay, I'm going to put that in my notes, and it seems like there must be something I can do about that. Then I learned a little bit about more about him, and I found out what he liked to do was eat chocolate. So we became the unofficial chocolate tasters. We started with hot chocolate, quickly morphed into hot chocolate and anything chocolate dessert. And we would test everything that we could in town to find out who had the best. And we would vote every day. Was that better than last time? Because I saw him every week. And so it was our running joke for the longest time. And we went from 11 years old until I was taking a 15, almost 16-year-old to Starbucks, where there was no more hot chocolate interest, but they always had chocolate chip cookies. So what I learned is that he just loved to read. This initial problem that came to my attention meant I had a job to do. It was the only thing he was telling me he really wanted at that time, so I just grabbed onto it. And I said, okay, I'm going to ask some questions. Why do foster children not have access to the library? Nobody had good answers. So I kept asking, okay, who's going to tell me why foster children don't have access to the library? Every child should have a library card. I don't care what your problem is with, well, they left that home and they left the books there and they didn't get returned, so we're not giving them a card. That was not good enough for me. So I met with some other people who found my case interesting. I met with county supervisors. I met with the library boards, the presidents of all or whatever they are, the CEOs, top person at the libraries, and we solved it. So in advocating for Jacob, I advocated for every child in the foster care system in Santa Barbara County, and we made sure that there was not going to be any kind of barrier to a child who wanted to read to have a library card. And that I didn't care if the books got left behind, if the foster parent didn't return them, whatever was happening, that was a different problem to solve. We found other ways to solve that problem. We didn't hold the child responsible for adult problems. So we solved that one. Really happy about that. So the next thing I learned is that group homes are a terrible place for kids. Terrible. I'm sure there is somebody who will make a case for that there's no other system, there's no other solution. I don't know, I'd probably like to sit down and have an argument with them about it. I thought it was horrible, and I saw that it was not doing any good, any value whatsoever for this child. Because one of the first things that he opened up to me and shared is he said, do you know that I have a family? He carried a little book, little flip. You know those little photo books where they're really inexpensive. You can get them at the dollar store and you just stick some photos into a plastic book. Carried that everywhere with him. It had a photo of his mom and his 4 siblings. Well, his mom suffered from terrible addictions and homelessness, and she had already lost several children to the system because she would have a child and be homeless and unable to take care of the child, leave it at the hospital, and they take them into care. And she just could not stay away from the opioids that took down her life. She spent most of her time that I was aware of outside of a Trader Joe's. And I had to deal with the heartbreak of an 11, 12, 13-year-old who was always straining his neck to see if he could see his mom. But what he told me about his family is he said, these are all my siblings. They've all been adopted, and someone's going to adopt me too. His siblings were all under the age of 5, all fairly easily people want young children to adopt. Once you're over 5, you're cut in half, and every year after that, it gets another cut in half. And it's not giving kids a very good chance when they get older to find a permanent home when their parents can't provide a safe home for them. And ultimately, Jacob's mom went to court and said, I can't do this. I want my children to be safe. I want the court to take my children so that I will know they are safe. They weren't ripped from her. You hear that a lot. Somehow that gets into the news a lot, but it wasn't the case. She asked for help in the way that she felt was going to best benefit her children because she knew she could not provide any kind of stability for them. At 5, Jacob knew the amazing talent of where to get dinner from a trash can outside of a Panera, which is the most generous place, apparently. He knew where it was more safe than other places to sleep outside. Those aren't really the things you want a child really that started at his age of 4 and 5 years old until he was 11. That was his life. And yet, through school was his saving grace. He was an amazing student. He read everything he could get his hands on, and he still had the belief when he knew that all of his siblings were adopted. He believed that he was going to be adopted too. So that became my number 2 goal. Follow this through and find the place where someone is going to give this child a permanent home. And he's not going to have to worry about, are they going to pack his bags in pack all of his things in a trash bag and leave it at the door because that home has given notice and he has to move again. We got him out, the social workers they thought he was going to be fine in the group home. I did not agree at all. I did not think he was safe. And he wasn't, I will tell you that. He got moved. Home number 1 that said they were open to adoption. So by now he was more than 12. It took me more than a year to get him out of that group home. Starting to enter into junior high. So you know how junior high is such a fun time for kids, right? 2 years of junior high. I had him set a goal. What do you want to achieve in junior high? I think I can do honor roll every quarter, every semester. I said, okay, let's set a little bit of a, like, what do you call it? Not a bribe. I don't want to call it a bribe, but an incentive. And so it was something for him to focus on while his life was in total chaos. Home number one that said they were interested in adoption lasted a couple of months. So that was junior high number one in 2 years. He almost made it a full semester there and was moved to home number two. Now, they weren't interested in adopting him, so that wasn't considered a permanent possible placement. But they kept him for 6 months so that he finished his first year having only attended 2 schools. The next place was a possible adoption and school number 3 in 2 years of junior high. Didn't work. They gave an abrupt notice. They were also trying to build up a situation where they were trying to pack as many kids into a room as possible. And I don't say that I see this often, but when you see kids starting to be packed into double bunk beds in a tiny room, hard not to say, is this for an economic reason? They didn't seem like they were having a tough time economically. It seemed like this was a business to them, and I didn't see how that was better than a group home. So we moved him to the next place, and school number, what am I on, 3? Anyway, yeah, so school number 4. So that was over in Fresno area, Madera, and they were set. They were going to adopt him, and I would travel over there, and the dad was involved in help teaching him how to play basketball and different things. I really was hopeful of this time. Seemed like it might work. Well, by this time, what is it, 13? I'm starting to push 14. Well, he made an unfortunate choice. He did a little surfing on the internet in the family room, not trying to hide anything, but not on a website that was really appropriate. And they called and said, get this kid out of my house right now. Well, I was a little bit stunned about that. And I asked some of my friends who had raised teenage boys, and I said, so just generic question here. Would you kick your son out of the house for being on the wrong website? Or would that be more of a learning opportunity? And the answer I got was, that's a Tuesday. Well, so they know better than I do. I guess it's just a thing. Maybe, it's a conversation that you have and then you move on, but you don't kick the kid out. But in foster care, you kick the kid out, I guess, is the thing. So 4 different schools, that kid made honor roll every semester. But by the end of junior high, he was tired. He was really tired. And he was starting to give up. Everything I tried to keep his spirits up and keep it going. I will tell you, it is hard to keep a kid's spirits up when they're constantly being let down. And all I could give is that I would not quit. I would go wherever I had to go to see him and let him know that I was still there, whatever was going to be the situation. The next move was his last. He moved then to a home that had his oldest younger sibling had a failed adoption out of state, and they brought that child, who is now 7, almost 8, and this family in Templeton, San Luis County, was going to adopt that child, and they heard that he had a half-brother. So they said, we just feel that we're called to also meet this other brother. And so we made the connection. I can't say it was all sunshine and roses. Like I said, by then he was pretty jaded on the whole system. But they weren't going to give up. They weren't going to give up. In their mind, he had had enough of not knowing when he was going to be moved again. So they stuck with it. He made some good choices and some bad choices in his first year in high school. He was really testing the home, I think you'd say, but they didn't quit. And so I had the joy and the honor of sitting in court with him and his adoptive parents when he was a little bit of a grouchy 15-year-old, pushing 16, kind of slouched down in a chair, if you've ever experienced that with a teen boy. I think he had a hoodie on, pulled like halfway over his face, really very typical. I had asked him before, as a court-appointed special advocate, you have to do reports and tell the court what the child's point of view is and everything like that. And I had asked him, what would you say is the best thing about being adopted? And he thought about it for a long time. We were at Starbucks by that time, gave up on the hot chocolate. And he said, well, I won't have to worry anymore about coming home from school and all of my stuff being packed in the bags on the porch and not knowing where I'm going next. It just broke my heart. Unfortunately, it's not a happy story. I mean, it has kind of a happy ending. I actually don't know if he grew up and joined the Air Force Division of the Army because, unfortunately, as an advocate, you have to also be willing to step out when the case closes. And sometimes the family will want you to stay connected, but more often than not, a family wants to normalize a child's life and end the system. And I've learned to respect that because, after all, if we think about it, it is not systems that should raise our children. People should raise our children. Systems don't care about what the child's favorite color is. They don't care that the child has the goal of joining the Air Force Division of the Army. Systems don't exist to individually care about a child. They exist as a safety net of sorts. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. I've been doing this for a long time, and I will tell you, seen both. I like to think that Jacob made it through and had some sense of himself and some sense of how things can be put together in your life. And I hope that he learned some things from our time together. If nothing else, I hope he learned that there are people in the world who won't quit on you. And if nothing else, that was what I was able to bring to his life. Probably one of the most dramatic times, one of the failed placements that he was in a lovely place in California called Copperopolis, which I did not know existed until I had to go there. It's kind of a cute little town, mountain town, and in the middle of nowhere. And this was one of the times when I went out there to talk to him about an upcoming court report that I was going to write for the courts. This was there's so many things that have solidified that this was the right career path for me. But this was a moment that I have shared many times because the impact on me was so huge in what a difference it made for a Casa to be serving on a case versus what if there was not a Casa? What if the Casa was not there on a day? We sat down. This was back in the day when we still did ice cream, chocolate, whatever we were doing that day. And I said, Jacob, it's time for me to do another one of those court reports. So I need to tell the judge what you want him to know. And he says, well, I've been thinking about that. He'd had some experience with this by now. We do court reports every 6 months for a child, so we help to support their best interest in court. On this day, he pulled a crumpled piece of paper out of his jacket pocket. and smoothed it down. And then he couldn't read it to me. And I said, do you want me to just read it? And he said, yeah, you just read it. So I do not know how that I read it in front of him without crying, because I barely am going to be able to repeat it without crying. He had written a list of 5 things that were important to him that he wanted the judge to know in this hearing. Just 5 things. Number 1, I do not want to take drugs. Number 2, please do not make me take drugs. Number 3, drugs cost my family and caused all of the pain that my mom ever had, and I don't want her life. Number 4, I promise to be good, just please don't let me take drugs. And number 5, I know that they want me to take drugs, but please don't make me take drugs. So I still get chills when I think of that. So one of the bits of power that you have as a court-appointed special advocate is that in writing your court report, you have the opportunity to quote specifically what a child says that they need and want. And that is exactly what I did. I shared my concerns about the placement. I shared my concerns that I had this whole episode sitting down on a visit. And then I shared his list, verbatim, 1 through 5. I also shared it with the social worker before we went to court, and she shook her head and she said, I do not think this is going to go well. I don't think that judge is going to let him out of the courtroom, and there is no way that they're going to be able to take him back even for a visit, even to collect his stuff. The judge will not let this happen. And sure enough, the judge had read my report. The social worker had supported that I felt that it was in the child's best interest that the court intervened at that point and find a better place. Make the system work for this kid this time. And it was particularly heart-wrenching when the judge got very quiet and he said, Jacob, I'm going to need to talk to you. Your Casa told me what you shared, because she has to. I'm not going to let you go back home with these people. You know, he was like, okay. Very accepting. And he said, we don't have anywhere for you to go yet. We're going to work on that. Can you hang out for the afternoon while we work on it? So he said, if my Casa will hang out with me, well, whatever. Of course, I had the afternoon free. So we hung out in a, what was that, restaurant. They had really good bread that he ate like a cookie. Anyway, it took hours, but we found a temporary placement that eventually turned into his final placement. I learned so much being Jacob's advocate. I learned that I did have it within me to stick to it and not quit. Most importantly, I learned that every single child who exists in the foster care system deserves someone to stand by their side. I will tell you that as the executive director of Casa, putting on my other hat now, we heard terrible stories. I often say we see the worst of humanity, and then we see the incredible resilience of children, and we see wonderful stories of when families are able to reunite. We have one of the highest rates in the nation of reunification. So Santa Barbara County is very unique in that there's no disproportionality in the children. We don't We don't pick and choose which children based on race or ethnicity or anything like that. It's purely on need. So I can proudly stand here and say that because I've looked at the numbers. We also do not discriminate against the parents. Most of the parents were harmed as children as well. Most of the parents, the only reason their children are in care is because they are suffering horrible addictions. It's just sad that now the addictions are so severe. Fentanyl, you can't keep a child safe from a home that has fentanyl on the coffee table. So we have to make difficult choices, and then we try to wrap as many services as possible around the families. And in Santa Barbara County, 52% of the families are reunited, and that is nationwide. That's a very high rate. It's about 30% nationwide, and we're a lot higher. So I think we're doing some things right. The thing that bothers me the most, I know the stories of the children that we are serving. At any point in time, we are probably serving 250 to 300 on a day. Over the course of a year, we serve roughly 500 children in Santa Barbara County. It's not the full need, sadly. It'll be about 80%. It was 85% that we managed last year. There's been a bump up in severity of cases this year, and we have not been able to keep up with the need. But what keeps me awake are the stories that sit on the wait list, because I don't know which story needs the advocate the most. All of the ones that are assigned, I feel okay. There are eyes and ears in that home, listening to that child, advocating on behalf of that child, making sure that they have what they need. Not in the sense that we can make their life perfect, but that we can make the best case of a difficult situation. We have that power as a community to be able to say, not here, not in this community. We're not going to let children slip through the cracks. Sadly, I have almost 100 kids on a wait list, and I do not know their stories. So I don't know which child is the child who needs us most. Not everybody is ready to be the volunteer. I like to think that everybody can do something. One of the needs that we have seen specifically in our community with deep cuts in the, well, social workers have been just decimated, deep county cuts. And so we've got a little trouble with that. Foster parents are less likely to be able to be at the place where they can fill all of the needs that a child would have, even for back to school. So I have advocates coming to us and saying, can our kids fund help make sure that my kiddo has an outfit to go back to school with? I did find a company that was willing to provide all of the backpacks. So very happy about that. But there's something about a new back to school outfit, right? Or something for picture day, or even if it's just something that the kid feels really good about that makes them feel like they fit in at school, that they're not wearing clothes that don't fit right, shoes that don't fit right. So I just went out on a leap of faith, and I told Child Welfare Services that this year we will do a special effort to try to raise the money so that every child can have at least one outfit. I mean, at Target, you can get some good sales, and you can get an outfit, maybe even a pair of shoes for less than $100. I have a lot of kids, so that we are running through the month of July a special back to school special fund for our kids fund, and that's one of the ways that people can help us now solve a problem that exists right now. If they're not in a place in their life where they are ready to strap up and say, okay, I'm going to be there, I'm going to step in the gap, and I'm going to be a child's advocate. I will make that report in court, and I will be that child's advocate. You are still able to advocate in ways by getting involved in helping in other ways. Help as a group, help as a community to help us help the kids. And so with that, giving you hopefully a little bit of an outlook of what life is of a case in the Casa office, case of an advocate, I will now put on either the advocate hat or the executive director hat, and I would love to take your questions. I think we'll just wait for the microphone. I thought it was right there. I guess I was ahead. I saw the 15-minute mark. I was trying to count down in my head. Okay, it's got to be at 10, 5. Are my what? Oh, yeah, do the video first. Oh, silly me. No questions yet. Totally forgot.
I didn't mean for tacos to become the thing. At first, it was just an excuse. A way to avoid sitting face to face in a room where everything felt heavy and watched. Food gave us something to do with our hands, something to look at that wasn't each other. I told myself it was practical. It wasn't. It was the only way I knew how to spend time with a 14-year-old boy who had learned that men don't stick around, and not ask him to believe that I would. My name is Ray. I'm 58. I'm a general contractor. I make a living fixing what other people decide isn't worth fixing anymore. Roofs after fires, foundations after floods, houses that look fine from the street but won't hold another winter. Before I ever met him, I read his case in the Casa office. I remember where I was sitting. A small desk, fluorescent lights, the hum of a printer down the hall. I read it once fast, then again slower. His dad barely registered in the story. Gone early enough that memory didn't have time to harden. After that, men came through the apartment like weather. Some loud, some mean, some drunk. One had stayed long enough to make the walls feel unsafe. His mom wasn't well. Drugs filled the gaps where food and sleep should have been. By the time the file reached me, the boy had learned the rules. Don't talk much, don't need much, don't trust anyone who says they'll be back. I closed the file and sat there longer than I needed to. I didn't take the case because I thought I could change anything. I took it because I knew how to show up to places where things were already broken and not flinch. When we first met, he didn't say more than a few words. Hood up, eyes down, arms folded tight like he was holding himself together. Not angry, practiced. I introduced myself, told him when I'd be back, then I left. And I came back. That's how it went for weeks. Then, one afternoon, after a court appearance that drained whatever little energy he'd brought with him, his stomach growled loud enough for both of us to hear. He froze, embarrassed. "You hungry?" I asked, already standing. He hesitated, then nodded once. There's a taco place behind a tire shop off Main Street. No sign. Plastic tables, chairs that wobble if you lean back too far. Construction guys eat there because the food's cheap and nobody asks questions. We sat at the same table every time. At first, he ate fast, eyes darting, like the plate might disappear. He didn't talk. I talked just enough, about work mostly. How you can't fix rot by covering it up, how buildings tell you what's wrong if you're willing to listen. One day he said, quietly, "My mom used to make these." I waited. When she was good, he added. I didn't ask anything else. The first time I thought I'd lost him, it happened without warning. I pulled up for our usual Tuesday pickup, and the house was empty. No car, no note, no explanation. I sat there longer than I should have, checking my phone like it might tell me what happened. I drove to the taco shop out of habit, sat alone at our table, and realized I didn't actually know where he was. That's a moment people don't talk about. The sudden quiet. The way your chest tightens up when you realize the kid you've been showing up for might have vanished and no one thought to loop you in. I made calls, left messages, waited. He'd been moved, quickly. Another placement didn't hold. I didn't sleep much that night. A few days later, I found him again. Different house. Same kid, hood back up, walls rebuilt higher than before. I didn't explain where I'd been. I didn't apologize for something that wasn't mine to control. I just told him when I'd see him next. And then I did. Somewhere in the middle of all of that, Home Depot entered the story. I had to stop for supplies for my own place and ask if he wanted to come along. He shrugged. He didn't talk much in the store. He watched, compared boards, checked weight ratings, read labels like they mattered. I handed him a tape measure without saying why. A minute later, he said, "Those ones are twisted. You want these?" He was right. I nodded. Good eye. That was the first time I saw him stand a little straighter. After that, he asked questions. How do you know when something's solid? What happens if you mess it up? Can you fix anything? Most things, I said, if you don't walk away. By the end of the case, the hood stayed off. He talked about auto shop, about maybe construction, about liking work where you can see when you've done something right. He wasn't healed, he wasn't safe forever, but he was looking ahead instead of just bracing. On our last Tuesday, I brought him a small tool chest. Nothing fancy, something that would last. He ran his hand over the top, slow, like he was testing it. I'll use it, he said. I know, I said. As he got out of the truck, he paused. You're still around, right? I nodded. Yeah. He didn't say thank you. He didn't need to. People ask what being a Casa means. I don't explain it much anymore. I say it means showing up when the story isn't neat. It means sitting at a plastic table behind a tire shop, not knowing how things will turn out, and coming back anyway. It means giving a kid something solid to hold on to, and trusting that he'll decide what to build with it. The case closed. The work didn't.
I had to tell a story from a male point of view because you can't always hear it just from my point of view. And that's the reality of Casa. It's not always clean. You don't always know the answers. You don't always know the end of the story. But as I shared before, I wrote the story myself based on a true story, and it still gets to me. As I said, there's a place for everyone to help with a solution for our kids. And it just takes saying, yes, I will. I will be someone who steps up, steps into the gap, and says, not here, not in my community. So now with that, I'm happy to take your questions either about advocacy or about my journey as the executive director.
Hello. Okay. Is it working? Yeah.
Much better.
Couple questions. One, do they keep the same judge? Two, is your limitation on why you can't take more children because of your operating budget or not having Casa volunteers? Number three, what is your main source of funding?
Okay. Number one, they generally do keep the same judge. Judge Garcia, if anybody is from the area may know, he was our presiding juvenile judge and sat on juvenile court for like something like a total. He had a break in there once for 4 years, but I think his total time on the juvenile bench was like 28 years. Pretty incredible. They generally serve terms of 4 years. And we did just have a judge for the last 4, and we've just had a change in judge. So the kids that have been caught in the middle of that are having a change in judges. And sadly, they do from time to time change attorneys. They always change social workers way too often. And I like to think that they don't change Casa volunteers. Number 2, I can remember. Okay, yes, number 2, the only reason that we are not serving 100% of the children in Santa Barbara County is because we do not have the volunteers needed to make it happen. It has nothing to do with funding. We have the capacity, we don't have the volunteers. I am so sad to say, after having built the program over nearly 20 years of involvement with Casa, I started as the outreach director, so I like to think I was building then too. We used to bring in between 70 to 85 volunteers a year. We're just ending our fiscal year 26 with 29 only. It is a gut punch. It's our lowest year since I have been with Casa. We're not alone. It's not something that we're doing wrong or anything like that. It is a problem that they're having across the country and all over California. Some programs have had a little bit different situation because with Families First legislation, which requires that child welfare services work harder to keep families together, many programs have seen their populations cut in half. That has not been our case. The challenge for us in Santa Barbara County is that there is not a way to keep a child safe in a home that has fentanyl in it. It just isn't. I mean, it's absolutely true what you have heard on the news about fentanyl. Even touching it sometimes can cause a death. And parents who are terribly addicted to fentanyl, which is the drug of choice in the county, what they will have a tendency is to, it's not that they don't care about their kids. I tell you, I have yet to meet a parent that does not care about their kids. However, the addiction is stronger, and they will do things like leave paraphernalia out on tables. And number 3, our primary source of funding, that's an interesting question. One of the ways that I was able to grow Casa in a time when many programs have struggled is I actually come from a financial background. I didn't come from the nonprofit world. I'm the weirdo that kind of came into this because it was my passion as a volunteer, and I combined it with a strong business background. So I looked at it as a different challenge, and I thought it would be crazy to try to build a program with one source of funding. So on purpose, I diversified our funding streams so that we don't have any one source of funding. We have multiple sources of funding, even to the point where when I'm looking at our individuals, which make up almost 25% of all of our funding, those individuals, some of them give with our annual appeal, some of them give at year end, some of them give at events, but it's still the individuals giving. We have a very, very steady number of grants, and we have a grants calendar that rolls, and we manage it very actively. So there's some grants that'll be off for 1 or 2 years, and we have balanced it with grants that work on opposite schedules. So we've just really worked hard to stabilize our funding streams so that we're not dependent on any one source. We are not heavily government funded, so we never have to. One of the great things about not being government funded is that you don't have to worry about when you're going to get cut, because it will happen. We do get some funding from the Victims of Crime Act. Every child we serve is a victim of violent crime. According to the statutes, child abuse is considered a violent crime. So we have some funding that comes through the Victim of Crime Act. And the Judicial Council makes up a tiny portion, that's state funding. It's about almost $20,000 a year on a $2 million budget. So, you know, it's a little bit there. So yeah, it's really just, I call it economic magic, of just not depending on any one source, but always keeping my eyes open for new sources of funding. One of the new sources of funding that we're reasonably excited about is Casa we were actually approached by CenCal, who is our Medi-Cal provider, and as they learned what Casa did, they found that it was directly matched with what they were trying to achieve in providing services to foster youth. And they saw us as the ideal partner to provide Medi-Cal services to foster youth age 0 to beyond 21. So we're just getting started with that, and we're hoping that'll be a strong and steady source of funding.
How do you deal with children who might have severe mental illness?
Well, I'm going to say, fortunately, it is rare that we have children with severe mental illness. We have, I would say, my opinion only, is that any child who is not living at home with mom and dad and sleeping in their own bed, they should have therapy. So whether or not you put that in a mental illness column or not, you know, I don't know. But when you talk about severe mental illness, like a schizophrenia or something like that, it is such a tiny percentage that it probably barely registers, like a 1% of the children that we serve.
Do you provide therapy?
We don't provide therapy. We advocate that the children get therapy.
Okay.
And again, that is a really sad situation in Santa Barbara County, because oftentimes we're just like screaming and hollering, this child needs therapy. Because more often than serious mental illness, what we'll see is the child who's been sexually abused in a home. And it might be in the bio home, and it might be in a foster home. We see the children who are sexually exploited and maybe trafficked, and they need therapy. We see children who have been, unfortunately, have seen their parents die from overdose way too often. They need therapy. There is such a lack of therapeutic services in our county, such an incredible lack of, and that is something we're working on with our partner for the, through our partnership with CenCal. We're working with a company called Sunlight Health, and they have the possibility of bringing in specifically targeted to foster youth some of these services. I'm really excited about that.
I forgot my other question.
Well, we'll get back to you.
Well, my name's David, and thank you very much for sharing about this incredible work. And I just personally like to acknowledge you for your willingness to follow your heart. That's just obvious.
Thank you.
And then putting all the brains behind it is a good idea too, most of the time. And the other thing I want to say is every child that you help probably keeps them out of prison.
100%.
And I was one of the speakers here. We're Freedom to Choose Project, or a nonprofit working with. We've worked with Project Preemie, and the description of all the antecedent stuff here. That's a typical story.
Yep.
And so. Everyone you do, I'm going to say the expression is, you know, it might be the story of all the starfish washed up and made a difference for that one.
Yep, we use that often.
Yeah, I could see why. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us today. I have a question maybe everybody knows. So what's the difference between the social worker and a Casa advocate?
That's a great question. So a social worker is obviously a paid position at the county, and they have a caseload. Their caseload is different than ours. The caseload at the county, a typical social worker might have 25 families. And so they're advocating for a whole family. There might be 5, 6 kids in a family. So you times that by how many families they have. It would be pretty rare if they have, we don't see very many kids. So they are focused on, they have a very strict state-regulated checklist of things that they have to go through that determine whether or not that case stays open and where that case should be in the dependency process. They are the ones that remove the children, along with law enforcement, of course. They are also the ones that help to see that the parent who has had a child removed is doing the case plan and getting better so that they might have a chance to bring the child back. The volunteer advocate, on the other hand, it has one case, just one case. And so all of their focus for the purpose of doing their volunteer work, they may have a sibling group, but it's still just one case. So they're an expert on that child or that sibling group. And that, I like to think of it as, this is our way of multiplication of troops. And we're able to serve more kids through volunteers, because if we just had social workers on staff, then we couldn't have as much individual one-on-one, and we couldn't know the kids. I would never have gotten the information that I got from Jacob if I didn't meet with that child every week, one-on-one, an hour or two, sipping hot chocolate. And there's magic in that. And when a child knows that you're there out of your own free will, not being paid to be there, because I've also had cases where the child thought I was a social worker being paid and really had a turnaround once you realized that that wasn't the case. So it's a very different role. It's the court advocate is just looking at what's best for the child. Oftentimes that is reunification with a parent, but we don't have that state checklist. We have what the child is feeling. We also can go with what that child is needing, separate from whatever the social worker is doing with the parent. You know, a child might have a simple desire or want, call it a need. Maybe they've always wanted to do gymnastics. We can solve those things. You know, when you connect a child with a sport or an activity, that can be something that is something for them to hang on to for life. And so making that little shift for a child, and that's not going to happen with a social worker who's trying to manage a family.
Two questions. Do you advertise for volunteers, like on TV or radio, or in addition to events like this? And the other question is, for the volunteers, how do you pair them up? You know, how do you figure out which volunteer for which child?
Great questions. I know I keep saying that, but they're always good questions. Tell me your first question again.
Oh, the first question is, how do you advertise?
Oh, how do I advertise? Okay, so we do everything. So when I started with Casa, we had no budget at all for any advertising. So I did what I call guerrilla marketing. And it was running off inexpensive posters and postering them everywhere. So, and since the typical age of a Casa volunteer is somewhere around my age, I went to what in marketing, they say you have to look at what that age group responds to. Well, you know what I respond to? What I saw growing up is when you wanted to be involved in something, there was a little tab at the bottom of a poster, and you would tear the number. Anybody ever see those? So that's what I do. I still do that with posters. We also have a TV commercial, which you may have seen. It is focused, it's also a really good video. It's focused from the angle of a service member who served his country, and now he serves his community's children. That's because of our proximity to the Air Force Base, or Space Force Base. And then we do radio, and we don't do as much print anymore, though over the years we have done print. And but I will tell you, no matter how many things we do, hands down, the most effective advertising we do is word of mouth. So whether it's coming out to things like this and talking, and you know what, you're sitting there and you're going, you know, yeah, this sounds really great, but it's not for me. But you know what, you know somebody. I swear, everybody in this room knows somebody for whom this volunteer work would be just the thing that hits right. It might not be you, but it is somebody you know. Volunteers like what? Oh, yeah, we have volunteers come from every walk of life, every walk of life. What I will say is our psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, you can't do therapy on a child. So you have to be able to draw that line really firmly. The way we pair things up, everybody who becomes a Casa volunteer has to agree to complete 30 hours of training. It's a lot, and we know that. And I've had people ask me, why do you make it so hard? And then my question is, well, how much less hard would you like me to make it when I'm going to pair them with a child who's at the most vulnerable time of their life? Should I do less of a background? Should I equip them with less information? It is, and it's not my choice anyway, it is mandated by National Casa and the Judicial Council that they're looking at it, but for the last 20 years, it's been 30 hours of training, which includes mandated reporting and everything like that. Our volunteers come from every walk of life. You have to be 21 because you can't sign anything in court under 21. And our oldest volunteer currently is 88. And we have every age in between. And we have volunteers from here in southern Santa Barbara all the way up into the Santa Maria area. And we do have most of the kids on the wait list are in Santa Maria, to a lesser extent Lompoc. I think we have 3 on the wait list in Santa Barbara. We were founded here in Santa Barbara back in 1993. And so we're very, very well established, and our volunteers don't quit. And so there usually is a waiting list of volunteers in Santa Barbara for the kids. So I say there may be 3 kids on the waiting list, there won't be there long. And, you know, there's like, I think 38 in Lompoc and the rest are in Santa Maria. The way we match them, after they've completed training and been sworn in court, when our volunteers complete training, they are sworn in and made an officer of the court for the purpose of serving a child. So you have unprecedented access granted to you by the court. You have a court order that gives you access to everything that a parent generally would have access to. Everything from medical records, talking to the teacher, talking to parents and caregivers, and everything like that. We learn about the volunteers, and they learn what they feel their strengths are. And then we have what's called a post-training interview with them, and they share where they feel they are called. You know, if there's an age group they are called to. We have, unfortunately right now, about 40% of our kids are 0 to 5. A third of them are 0 to 3. So that is the direct impact of children that are removed at birth. So we have people who will come and say, well, I would love to be an advocate for a baby. And it looks completely different than advocacy for a 17, 18, 19-year-old does. But we look for what the advocate, now fully trained, feels that they are going to bring. I always like to tell people to remember that once a child is 16, they have to ask in court for a volunteer. And so I always put the plug in for the older kids. When you have a child, 16, 17, 18, 19, who has asked the court for a court-appointed special advocate, you have incredible opportunity, because that's a young person who knows that having a Casa volunteer is going to be the difference between where they are right now and where they need to go as an adult. And we've seen amazing things happen. You'll always hear these gloom and doom things about kids in foster care don't graduate high school, and that's just baloney. That does not happen. And I can't even tell you the last time I heard about a kid dropping out in Santa Barbara County. Sometimes they're a little slower to graduate, but most of them are graduating on time. We've got kids, I know of 3 kids right now that are either at UCLA, USC, or Davis. I mean, it's because the Casa volunteers sat with them, filled out scholarship applications, filled out the paperwork. It's complicated. And if you don't have a parent or anybody to kind of help you through with it, it's a lot. So it's very rewarding for those who take on those cases. But I will say the most popular, 5 to 12. They're the first off the wait list. Everyone was 5 to 12. Does anybody on Zoom ask questions? No?
Volunteer. Why do you need to qualify as a volunteer?
So number one, you have to care about kids. You also need to be able to pass our really stringent background check, which is FBI, DOJ, the CACI, Child Abuse Central Index, the DMV. I mean, it just kind of goes on and on. It's pretty thorough. You have to complete the training, and then you have to show up and be sworn in. You have to have an open heart. And then I have learned not to judge, because I have had people where I thought, this person's a little rough, I don't think, and they end up being the best advocate. So I have no judgments. It's amazing to see. And then there's sometimes where I think, oh, this is going to be a perfect advocate, and they quit a case within 3 months. So yeah, I don't pull any punches. I just tell people, you've got to care. You've got to be commitment oriented, and you've got to say, I'm in it for whatever it takes to bring this child through this period of time in their life. I think we're done. No other questions. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Kim Colby Davis. Wow, what a story. Thank you. I really think that you found your vocation.
Yeah. This is it.
You're God's hands and feet on the ground for these children. They're so blessed to have you advocating for them. We have a saying in one of our affiliate ministries, for whatever it takes, for as long as it takes.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And that's your
That's a good one.
dedication. So
I might
God
steal
bless you in your service. Here's a small gift of appreciation for us. Let's give her a hand of applause, please. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.